The private dining room of the Meridian Hotel looked as though it had been designed to impress people who were already impossible to impress. The walls were paneled in dark walnut polished to a mirror sheen, absorbing sound and light alike. A long table stretched across the center of the room, dressed in linen so crisp it held its own shape, each place setting aligned with almost surgical precision. Soft amber light fell from recessed fixtures, warming the silverware and crystal glasses until they gleamed quietly, as if aware of their value. Victor Hale sat at the head of the table, jacket draped over the back of his chair, sleeves rolled just enough to reveal a watch that cost more than the building's kitchen equipment combined. He checked it again, irritation tightening his jaw. Swiss engineering had taught him many things over the years, precision, patience, perfection, but waiting was not one of them. He tapped the table once. Then twice. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, loud enough for the men beside him to hear. "How hard is it to bring water?" Across the room, Elena moved between tables with a full tray balanced on her palm, her posture straight, her steps measured. She had learned long ago that rushing only created mistakes, and mistakes in a place like this were unforgivable. The room was full tonight, private meetings, discreet deals, money exchanging hands over quiet conversation. Every movement mattered. "Excuse me," Victor said sharply, lifting 2 fingers without turning his head. "You, miss." Elena stopped immediately and turned toward him, shifting the tray slightly to redistribute the weight. She walked over, her expression neutral, attentive. "Yes, sir." Victor finally looked at her, his eyes flicking over her uniform, her name tag, her calm face. "I ordered sparkling water 5 minutes ago. Do you consider that prompt service?" "I apologize for the delay," Elena replied. "The kitchen is handling several requests at once, but—" "Too slow," Victor interrupted, his voice slicing through the room. "If you can't keep up, you shouldn't be working here." The words landed harder than he intended, or maybe exactly as hard. A faint silence rippled outward. One of the executives cleared his throat. Another pretended to adjust his napkin. No one intervened. Elena felt the familiar sting behind her eyes, but she kept her gaze steady. She had been spoken to this way before, by people who believed money granted permission. She had learned to let the words pass through her rather than lodge inside. "I'll bring it right away," she said simply. Victor scoffed, already turning back to his phone. "Apologies don't run businesses." She nodded once and stepped away. As she walked toward the service station, Elena let out a slow breath. Her feet ached from the double shift, her shoulders tight with fatigue, but her movements remained smooth. She poured the sparkling water carefully, ensuring the glass was chilled, the carbonation perfect. Details mattered, even when respect was absent. Behind her, Victor's voice rose and fell as he barked instructions into his phone, his tone clipped, impatient. Numbers, deadlines, dismissals. He lived in a world where hesitation was weakness and dominance was mistaken for leadership. Elena returned to the table and placed the glass in front of him with quiet precision. "There you go, sir." Finally, Victor muttered, not bothering to look up. She took a step back, preparing to turn away, when something made her pause. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a subtle hitch in his breathing, a slight break in the rhythm of his voice. Years of training sharpened her awareness. She had spent nights in crowded hospital corridors, had learned to notice the small things others missed. Victor coughed once, a short, sharp sound. He cleared his throat and continued speaking, but his words came slower now, as if forced through resistance. His free hand rose to his collar, fingers tugging at the fabric. Elena watched, her body still but her attention locked on him. He coughed again, harder this time. The phone slipped slightly in his grip. His face flushed red, then shifted to a pale, waxy shade that didn't belong under the warm lights of the room. "Sir," one of the men beside him asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "Everything all right?" Victor tried to answer, but no sound came out. His eyes widened, the confidence that had filled them minutes ago evaporating, replaced by raw confusion. He pushed his chair back abruptly, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. The phone slipped from his hand and hit the table with a sharp crack. Elena was already moving. Victor stood, swaying slightly, one hand gripping the edge of the table, the other clutching at his chest. His breaths came shallow and fast, each one visibly harder than the last. Panic spread across his face, undeniable now. "Call for help," someone said, half standing, frozen in place. Elena reached his side and gently but firmly guided him back into the chair before his knees could buckle. Her tray was forgotten, her focus narrowed to him alone. "Sir, look at me," she said, her voice calm, grounded. Try to breathe slowly. He tried. Failed. His lips tinged faintly blue. She loosened his tie, unbuttoned his collar with quick, practiced motions. Did you eat something new? She asked. Anything you're allergic to? Victor's eyes darted to his plate, to the half-eaten fish, the pale sauce pooled beneath it. His mouth opened, but his throat tightened again, producing only a strained sound. Elena followed his gaze. Her heart kicked into a faster rhythm, but her hands remained steady. She had seen this before. Too many times. She raised her voice just enough to cut through the growing chaos. Someone call emergency services now. A chair scraped back. A phone was pulled from a pocket. Victor's breathing worsened, his chest heaving, fear now fully replacing arrogance. He looked at Elena then, not as staff, not as someone beneath him, but as the only person who seemed to know what was happening. She met his gaze without judgment, without triumph. I'm here, she said quietly. Stay with me. Around them, the room that had moments ago felt invincible, sealed off by wealth and power, now seemed fragile, hushed, waiting. Elena felt the weight of the room settle onto her shoulders the moment she said the words. Someone had to take control, and instinct had already chosen her. The executives stood frozen in varying degrees of disbelief, their tailored confidence useless in the face of something they couldn't negotiate or outsource. Victor's breathing had turned into a thin, rasping whistle, each inhale a struggle, each exhale incomplete, like his body had forgotten how to finish the task. Sir, stay seated, Elena said, firm now, not unkind but leaving no room for argument. She crouched slightly so she was level with his eyes. I need you to focus on me. Victor nodded weakly, though the motion cost him effort. His hands trembled, fingers clawing at the edge of the table as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. The man who had commanded boardrooms with a glance now looked impossibly small, reduced to the simple need for air. Elena slid one hand to his wrist, checking his pulse. Rapid, too rapid. Her mind worked quickly, cataloging symptoms, aligning them with memories of hospital rooms and instructors, voices echoing from years ago. Swelling, labored breathing, sudden onset, severe allergy, most likely triggered by food. The sauce. She glanced again at the plate, at the faint pink shells blended into the garnish, almost decorative. Shrimp reduction, perhaps. Elegant. Dangerous. Can you nod if you're allergic to shellfish? She asked. Victor nodded, panic flashing brighter in his eyes, as if the confirmation itself made the danger more real. He tried to speak again, but his throat tightened, betraying him. Okay, Elena said softly. I've got you. She reached into the small inner pocket of her apron, fingers closing around the familiar shape she always carried, a habit formed from long nights on the ward and too many close calls in public places. She hesitated only long enough to make eye contact with the nearest executive. I'm trained, she said. Nursing background. I need space. They moved instantly, chairs scraping back, the circle widening. Elena removed the cap and positioned the injector against Victor's thigh, steadying him with her other hand. You'll feel a pinch, she warned. He barely reacted when she administered it. His attention was entirely inward, focused on the battle raging inside his chest. Elena counted silently, then withdrew the injector and set it aside. She placed 2 fingers lightly against his neck again, monitoring, watching. Seconds stretched. The room held its breath with him. Victor's breathing remained rough, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, it began to change. The harsh whistle softened, his chest expanded a little more fully. His shoulders dropped a fraction, as though his body had decided not to give up just yet. That's it, Elena murmured. Good. Keep breathing. Sirens wailed faintly somewhere beyond the hotel walls, growing louder by the second. The sound cut through the tension like a promise. Victor swallowed, managing a shallow breath that didn't end in a cough. His eyes, still wide, flicked around the room, taking in the faces staring back at him. Fear lingered there, but something else had crept in alongside it, shock, maybe, or disbelief. He looked at Elena again, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. You, he rasped, the word barely audible. I know, she said gently. Don't talk yet. The paramedics burst in moments later, efficient, composed, their presence instantly shifting the energy of the room. Elena briefed them quickly, concisely, stepping aside only when she was sure Victor was stable enough to be moved. As they lifted him onto the stretcher, Victor reached out suddenly, his hand closing weakly around Elena's wrist. The contact startled her, not because it was forceful, but because it was desperate. Wait, he croaked. Please. The paramedics paused, allowing him a moment. Victor swallowed, gathering strength he didn't know he still had. You saved my life, he said, the words uneven but unmistakable. Elena met his gaze. There was no satisfaction there, no trace of the humiliation he might have expected to see reflected back at him. Only quiet certainty. It's what I'm trained to do, she replied. Anyone would have done the same. He shook his head slightly. No, he said, not anyone. The stretcher rolled away, the doors closing softly behind it, leaving the room eerily silent. The executives stood in place, unsure how to resume their lives now that something so unmanageable had intruded. Power, money, influence, none of it had mattered in those moments. Only knowledge, only compassion. Elena returned to the service station, hands suddenly aware of their own tremor now that the urgency had passed. She rinsed them under cool water, grounding herself, letting the adrenaline ebb. The manager approached her cautiously, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. Are you all right? He asked. She nodded. Yes. Later, when her shift finally ended and the city lights had replaced the hotel's artificial glow, Elena stepped outside into the night air. Her phone buzzed with a message from the manager. Mr. Hale is stable, it read. He asked me to thank you personally. Elena slipped the phone back into her bag and continued walking. Somewhere across the city, a man who had once dismissed her worth was learning a lesson no amount of wealth could buy. And she, unchanged by the revelation, carried on, steady, capable, quietly powerful in a world that often mistook speed for value and arrogance for strength.